good morning and good afternoon. This is Tim Harris, and this is the Harris Real Estate University Superstar Interview. So every Friday, Julie and I provide the Superstar Interview not just for Harris Real Estate University students, but we provide it for the entire real estate community. This is a free service, if you will, a free real estate training session. During these Superstar Interviews, we usually do one of three things. We'll take a top-producing realtor like we are today, Mr. Pat Hiban, and we interview him. We ask him the questions that you want the answers to. Other Fridays, what Julie and I will do, is we'll present information that we know from the previous week's coaching calls that you need to hear. Last week's Superstar Interview, Julie and I presented to you what we are calling the Harris Real Estate University Success System. Some of you called it the real estate game. A lot of great feedback on that. If you did not listen to that call, if you want to have notes from that call, go to the blog, timandjulieharris.com, and just scroll back some previous posts, and you'll find it. You have to go back probably about 15 or 20 posts, but you'll find all the notes there. And I also emailed you all the information from that call, so you can also check your email. And then other Fridays, what we do is we'll take somebody who's not in the real estate industry, but I think that person might be able to have a really positive influence on your business or at least your ways of thinking. I am really focusing on, for the next couple of weeks, I'm going to be focusing on those types of interviews. I'm going to be bringing in some economists. I'm going to be bringing in some people that, really I think will have a good cage rattling for you. So open your mind to the possibilities. Open your mind to the opportunities that are available in this marketplace. Speaking of opportunities and possibilities, I think really no one comes to mind more so being able to take advantage of the current opportunities and possibilities more than today's expert, today's superstar, Mr. Pat Hiban. So, Pat, welcome to the call.
Thank you, Tim. Good to be here.
Oh, great. So, listen, I do sincerely appreciate you taking the time. I know you've been busy between your world travels and your running your successful real estate team and now your new book. I know you've been you're obviously very successful. You've been very busy, so thanks for your time today.
My pleasure.
So, Pat, let's just jump right in. So some of the people, believe it or not, might not know who you are. So let them know who you are and then where you sell real estate.
Sure. My name is Pat Hiban. I sell real estate in a town called Columbia, Maryland, which is in right between Baltimore and Washington. We're a suburb of both. Many of our people in our area, one spouse will work in Baltimore City and the other will work in Washington, D.C. So we're lucky enough to have the federal government and the cybersecurity and the national security agency and agencies such as that around here. And I've been selling real estate here for 24 years. I like Tim said, I've sold over $1 billion in volume, one house at a time, done all residential, no commercial, and it's probably over 4,000 homes sold. And I have two teenage daughters, married for 17 years, and that's about it.
Oh, that's it? So the interview's over?
Yeah.
So
who I am.
You mentioned,
but
you sell partially in Washington D.C. and I know there was a report that came out, Pat, and I think you probably know this better than anybody, that Washington D.C. is actually the best real estate market in the country right now. So you're not in D.C., but are you experiencing any of that sort of positive blowback from D.C. doing so well?
Yeah, things tend to move north, and certainly. We're affected by that. I mean, we're probably not as affected as living in D.C., but we're definitely affected by that. I mean, I am licensed in D.C. We probably sell 10 houses a year maybe in D.C., but the majority of our stuff is right in the suburbs of D.C.
Strange times where Washington, D.C. is the hottest real estate market in the country, isn't it?
It's weird. I'm surprised by that.
Yeah,
but who knows what they used to base that on, you know?
Well, that's true. Now you're kind of bringing up the whole controversy about who to actually believe as far as home sale numbers, but that's a wholly different conversation, I think. So what did you do before selling real estate?
I went to college. I pretty much went straight from college into real estate. I substitute taught for a few months while I got my license, and then as soon as I got my license, I pretty much went into real estate. So I've been doing it since I was 21 years old. And it's pretty much my only full-time occupation has been real estate.
So you were going to originally be a school teacher? Is that what I just heard?
No, well, I had a degree in sociology. What happened was I didn't know where I wanted to go. I spent 2 years in college kind of aimlessly, and then the counselor said to me, "You need to pick a major." I said, "Well, the money's going to run out in 4 years, so what can I take that's going to get me out here the quickest?" And they said, "Sociology only requires 10 classes." So I said, "Let me be a sociology major and get out on time," which I did. And then I couldn't get a job, actually. I applied for Xerox, AT&T, all the major sales jobs. They, didn't, for whatever reasons, they didn't hire me. And I actually applied for 4 local real estate companies that turned me down as well. They said that, I was too young. I was 21. I looked 16. I didn't have any experience, and just wasn't what they were looking for. So I went with a company that specialized in taking part-time agents. It was basically the whole company was part-time agents. So even though I was kind of going at it full-time, I was considered part-time because I substitute taught 1 or 2 days a week. So anyways, and that's kind of how it happened. And I see some of those office managers today, 25 years later, and they're still in the area, and they're like, "Oh, God, I can't believe I turned you down."
Yeah. How long did it take for you to become successful? Because if I remember correctly, Julie and I met you back in the mid-'90s originally, and at that point, you were just starting to take off. And maybe I'm remembering incorrectly.
Yep.
But
yeah, that's probably about right. I mean, I went through a couple of ascensions. My first ascension happened after about year 3. My first year I made $13,700. My second year I made $24,500, and then everything changed and I made $83,700. And from there I kind of faltered around $100,000 for probably 5 or 6 years. Then about year 8, I got my own team. I started building a team. I again ascended to about $300,000. Then I got stuck right around 3 years in a row. I had made right around $290,000, $280,000, $300,000 with a team. And my office manager came to me and she said, "This is kind of uncanny. Have you noticed that you're like stuck right here?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "No, I actually didn't notice. I was too busy caught up in just selling houses, as many as I could." And she said, "Let's analyze this." And we analyzed it, and then I decided to make some changes and leverage myself more, go after new business more rather than just the referral business and the ad call business. I decided to try to go after the kind of come list me business. And that was probably about the time we first met. And then, my next ascension happened in the late 90s, and I just went kind of up from there, and this blew up. And 3 years in a row, we made over $5 million each year in commissions. And then of course the market crashed. Here it went down 30%. In 2007 we dropped 32%. 2008 we dropped another 35%. 2009 we dropped another 29%. So we dropped, it was a total of 65% if you proportionally add that up. So
are you talking about, Pat? Are you talking about commissions? So basically,
I'm talking about number of units. I'm talking about number of units in the state of Maryland sold. So the market dropped. That many less units were sold. Therefore, that many less units were sold proportionately by us, and my commissions dropped. We went from selling 508 units in 2006 to 2009 selling like 150 or something. And then I met Tim in Arizona, Tim and Julie in Arizona, and we had lunch together, as you remember, and Tim said to me, and I mentioned this in my book, I say, we're sitting there, and I don't even know if you remember this, but you said to me, well, why are you continuing to go after the money that is, flowing in a different direction? And I said, what are you talking about? And he said, you want to go where the money's flowing, short sales and foreclosures. That's where all the money's going now, not towards, come list me calls for people that want to sell a 300 and move up to a 700. That's just not happening like it had been. And he was absolutely right. So I immediately went home and I started prospecting asset managers. And over the course of the last 2.5 years, I've built accounts with 42 banks and mortgage companies. We now have a little bit under 300 foreclosures for sale. And in 2008, I had literally, I had zero. I just said, when Tim and I talked, I was not doing any foreclosures, period. I was doing all resales. And so last year we did 265 units or something like that. And this year we'll do over 300 units just because in January we had like 24 closings. And we have a lot of stuff that's kind of waiting to hit the market. I think it's going to be a good year for us unit-wise. And
well, from all indications, everyone we've been, I absolutely, to say this, I have to be honest, it actually makes my skin crawl to have to use these words because we've been hearing this so off and on, sporadic from all the servicers, all the banks for the past almost 3 years about, the fact they're going to start releasing their assets. And there's been a whole host of reasons why they haven't. But regardless, all that's coming to an end really, really quick. And you'll be happy to hear this, Pat. Yesterday, I had a confidential conversation with somebody from the largest bank in the United States, and he told me very specifically that they are now looking for new agents to replace some of the agents they had previously as listing agents because those agents are getting fired. And they're actually looking to expand the number of listings that each of their active REO listing agents are going to have. So what they're trying to do basically is form a national sort of like A team of agents, opposed to having a bunch of agents. They're going to, they're going to kind of look for the best of the best and then give them more assets to manage. They're kind of changing their
right.
But here's the interesting thing, I think. So that was the largest bank in the nation, and I promised I wouldn't pass along any information, so I'm not going to, but an idiot would be able to figure out who I'm referring to. Yep. They said that they're going to start releasing a ton of them second quarter, so that's like, a month or two from now.
Yep.
And I heard the same exact thing from Wells Fargo, and I heard the exact same thing from Chase. So all the banks now know that they're going to be releasing in more numbers, not a flood, but a really strong stream, if you will.
Yep.
And because the other smaller banks know that the big bank's going to be doing it, they don't want the big bank to beat them to market. So now there's almost like I don't know what you want to call it, but almost a competition to get their assets on the market. So, yeah, I agree, Pat. You're going to have an incredible year.
That's interesting because you're right about having heard that for a long time. We heard it a good part of last year, and I think a lot of them were supposed to be released in November and probably November and December. And quite frankly, nothing got released. I mean, if anything, maybe 30% of what they wanted to release got released because of the robo-signing debacle. And now things are starting to slowly be pushed out. But there's even more of a logjam now, now that they had to jump through all this bad press, with the robo-signing. So,
well, now you have the problem.
It could destroy the market in some neighborhoods, literally destroy the market, because there's houses we have on the same street that we haven't put on the market yet that we know we've got 2 foreclosures on a street of 10 houses that are just going to,
and people don't know,
come on at the same time. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I mean, we don't like to mince words and kind of operate in the gray area here, because I like to give people like the worst news, just the right between the eyes, kind of like you and I were sitting talking, just the two of us. We'd just be having a real frank conversation, and that's how we like to deliver information to students. Because if you don't prepare them for the worst, they're not going to be able to be prepared, and even if it doesn't get as bad as we expect it to get, they're still going to be over-prepared, kind of like you are now.
Right.
And there's no question that we're in a double dip in home values, and there's no question that home values are going to fall again. There's no question that buyers are going to have a harder time getting loans. There's no question that agents who are focusing on short sales and REOs and BPOs are going to, frankly, have their businesses take off as long as they stay really intensely focused right now. So, an interesting question I have for you is, now that you're regrowing your business, now that you're essentially ascending the mountain again, as it were, which I know you also do for fun, climb mountains, but how is it that you're doing your business differently? How are you forming it differently? You're obviously are you doing close to the same volume as you were back in the bubble?
No, not at all. I mean, here's the thing. Number one, if you get into the REO business, and I sort of knew this, but I didn't know the magnitude of it, to be honest with you. It ruins your average sale price. It gives you a lot of leverage in that you're more secure in that. Here's how I look at it. Okay, back in the boom, the way that we got this, the way we got from getting above that, say, $300,000 mark, where you're getting referrals and ad calls and that sort of thing, past clients, right? Getting above that, we had to buy the business, and the way we bought it was radio, television, mass branding, and it worked, but it was very expensive. And the risk was low because we could spend $20,000 on TV commercials and we would get $80,000 back in commissions. And so although that sounds like a lot of money, it relatively was very profitable, and it didn't feel high risk. But when the market crashed, then that's when we started saying, oh my God, now we have to, man the hatches and start laying people off and find a smaller space to rent and blah, 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 on and on. With REOs, I don't have a lot of expenses, meaning I don't advertise, period, right? We don't buy any business. I'm not spending, a $50,000 a month or even $1,000 a month marketing budget because I'm not marketing for new business. Am I making sense?
Oh, absolutely.
So we can increase our units in the hundreds and several hundreds, and we can do it for very little cost, and we can watch our risk and our leverage much closer than we were before, and not feel like we're gonna lose it in a matter of a month or two if we don't get more sales, because I don't have much overhead. But the downside is it kills your average sale price. I mean, our average sale price was $430,000 roughly in the boom, and now it's dropping below like $180,000. So,
well, is that true for your market too, though, Pat? I mean, and
no.
Just in all fairness to you, no,
it's not true for the market. Our market has dropped, but what's happened is I went from being a local branded agent, right, the guy that everybody knew as like the iconic agent in their neighborhood, to being a kind of a statewide agent. Because with the REOs, we have listings an hour and a half away, and the people in the neighborhood have no idea who Pat Hiban is an hour and a half away.
Well, Pat, let's take a break here, because I don't want to make any assumptions that these guys know how much you really were branded and what you were doing. I only know some of the stuff you were doing, but agents, here's what I want you to take away from what Pat is saying. Pat is an absolute extreme example of versatility, okay? So now, in Pat's own words, it took him a little while to acknowledge essentially that the game had changed, And then when he figured it out, when he had that aha moment, and I appreciate being part of that aha moment, he was able to quickly turn on his heels and change his business model. He did not stay in the old way of thinking, in the old business model, hoping and praying that somehow the clouds would clear and it would come back to the way it was. But just to give you an idea of what Pat used to do and how radically different his business is now, I'll rattle off the things, Pat, I know you used to do and the kinds of things that you were spending money on. Yep. You were doing a lot of radio. You were doing a lot of TV. You did a lot of direct mail too, didn't you? Weren't you mailing all kinds of things to a vast geographic area? Well, here, let's just put icing on the cake. How much money were you spending per month to essentially build your brand back in the day?
Over $40,000 a month, between $40,000 and $50,000 just in marketing costs. We actually advertised in 21 different publications each month. 21, and slowly we went, down to 20. Then we went down to 18. Then we went down to 17, and eventually now we advertise in one homebuyer's journal that costs $200 a month. I don't even consider it, advertising because I don't know how many people actually even see it. But we advertise in there because we still do some retail from our past clients and that sort of thing, and we want to have something to show them. But it's basically, $200 a month, and that's it. And that's how radically we dropped it. We just kept dropping it, and then we just, once we started doing more and more REOs, we said, hey, these are all about MLS and price, and and that was the reason. One of the benefits of going there is just because, we essentially didn't have to have that heavy weight following us around. That was that $40,000 weight.
But Pat, you also had not just one team, but if I remember correctly, you had 2 offices. How many people did you have working for you?
We had 54 at the peak.
Right.
Yeah, that's right. And the other team probably had another 12,000 a month. So they were doing their own ads too. So it was up there.
Looking back now, your monthly overhead to run your business between the advertising, the marketing, all that associated costs with having all those people. Do you remember how much it was? I'm sure you do.
It was $250,000 at its peak a month.
A month.
Yeah.
Okay. So you were spending $3 million a year, and you were generating $5 million a year.
Correct. Yeah, roughly.
Okay. So when you're looking back at that business model now, where's your mind go? I mean, were you thinking wow, I did it? Those were some crazy times? Or are you thinking back, man, I would never have that kind of fixed cost and overhead again? I'm sort of curious.
Both. Well, I'm the type of guy that, if I'm winning at craps, naturally you're going to start throwing more and more money on the table. But I'm also the type of guy that will pull his money off the table before anybody else does. So I like to go big, but I'm also smart enough to, pull it out before I lose it all. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but
you are actually, and you're leading to another question that I just had a student ask. How long did it take you to realize that essentially, since you're using the game analogy here with playing craps, how long did it take you to realize that the rules of the game had actually changed?
It took a while. I mean, it wasn't definitely overnight. And there was a year when we were, the reality of it is we went from making $5 million in gross commissions, and the net was somewhere around 1.5 because you asked. That was what the tax returns show. Okay, so 3 years in a row, we were, 7 figures in net commissions, and then.
Pat, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I know people are going to want to know this. So when you say $1.5 million, you're talking, Are you saying that you were paying yourself $1.5 million? Is that what you're saying?
That was my profit. Yeah.
Okay, good.
So that was what adjusted gross income for me personally was 1.5, roughly.
Before taxes.
Correct. Oh, yeah. So after a while, you run out of deductions. You have to. I had an accountant tell me, Pat, you got to spend it to write it off. So you can't just deduct stuff you don't spend. So anyway, so where were we? What the heck were we talking about? I lost my.
Well, so basically, you transitioned, and you.
Oh, how long did it take?
Yeah, right, exactly.
It took longer than I wanted to. I mean, we went. We had 54 people, so when you have that many people, you really have a lot of hope. And there's times where the market, blips like it is now with the foreclosures. I mean, there's a blip going on now where it's really slow. And your hope is always that, hey, when the spring hits, it's all going to change. So I think, and a lot of people had that hope because for 4 or 5 years straight, every month was better than the last.
Yeah.
So, and we hadn't had a blip in a while. So I remember the day distinctly that I really was shaken by it, and that's, we were averaging 41 settlements a month for several, for a while. And our thing was 41 settlements, 40 settlements, right around 40 settlements every month. And and I came in the office and I sat down and I looked at the numbers and looked at the projections, and we had 6 settlements scheduled, and from 40 some. And that happened like overnight. Literally, it was probably at the end of the year. It was probably like a December, November, but still. It was shocking, and I said to the bookkeeper, we had a full-time bookkeeper that cutting the checks and everything. I said, what the heck? What's next month the month after that look like? And he was like, you only got 2 that month. I'm like, what? And that's when I really freaked. And we were able to suck it up for a couple of months, and then when it didn't improve, that's when we started making cuts. It was one day I laid off 7 people in one day. I just came in and one at a time. And then, like probably another 4 months went by and it didn't get better, even with the less people. So then we laid off I laid off 22 people in 18 months. So now I have about 20 people on the team, but we actually built it back up. Last year, I think we hired 5 or 6 people. So we brought it all the way down to about 12 people from 54, and then we started building back up again.
So your business model now is focused more on, it's kind of like Pat using terms from 20 years ago. It's a B2C, B to consumer, business to consumer. That's kind of where you were before. You're still doing obviously a lot with consumers, but you're now really focused on B2B, where you're servicing the servicers, you're servicing the banks. You're essentially, you have, opposed to having 200 sellers, you have maybe 30 or 40 sellers, those asset managers who send you multiple listings. And I know the frenetic energy. Pat, you sound very calm, to be honest with you. You sound very calm. You sound very, you can laugh at some of the, interesting experiences you've had over the past few years, the good ones and the bad ones. So do you prefer this kind of business more than the old business?
Well, the old business, no, I don't. The old business was a lot funner. You know what I mean? Because it was, come on now. Like our average commission was $11,000. You would cut a commercial. You'd have fun cutting a commercial and put it on the air, and the next day, people would call. Literally the next day, people would call and say, come list my house. You go list it. It'd sell in 3 days. You settle in 40, and you collect $11,000, and it was, and then you treat everybody in the office to. There were times when we bought lunch for everybody in the office every day of the week. It was a fun time to be in that business for that 4 or 5 years where it was just, going crazy. So I would much prefer that, but that was a party. That was a party that just didn't end. Now, I'm a lot more secure, but I was secure at the time. I was never thinking, when we were doing 41 settlements a month, I was never thinking it could be 6 next month. I mean, that.
Well, as a percent though, Pat, I'm sure your business model now is actually more profitable. Your top line might not be the same, but I bet your percent of take from the top line is greater now than it was before because you don't have to spend all the money on the lead generation.
As a percentage basis, yes, but as a commission basis, no, because again, our average commission went from 11 to about 5. So, yeah, does that make sense?
No, it does make sense. But you can obviously scale the business up a lot easier now than you did before. So, that's the big difference.
Absolutely. And my expectations aren't huge anymore either. You know what I mean? I know that I shouldn't say this, but I'm more realistic today about, if I only make X amount, I'm okay with that. You know what I mean? I do want to make more money, but that time will come when I can latch on to another more profitable wave of some sort. Right now in the foreclosure business, I mean, you'd have to sell. I mean, to be honest with you, I'm at a guy. You got to be very careful with just like any time, you got to be very careful with, even with the foreclosures, you still got to be very careful with your expenses and your reimbursements and making sure you're getting your money back. And I met a guy that I was at the CRS convention, and I was on a panel with a guy, and he said he did 1,100 units last year. I was like, wow, you must be killing it. And he said, well, my profit margin is only 7%. I said, what? And so, it ends up he made some mistakes with getting reimbursed back, and he had a bad person collecting money, and he lost a lot of money that way. And so, it's you still got to keep your eye on the ball, even in the foreclosure business. But anyways, it's fun to watch, and it's interesting, and I'm glad I'm doing it, because I think that if I wasn't in the foreclosures and I wasn't going after foreclosures and short sales, I would be at a very and not spending any money branding and not spending any. I would be limited to, the couple of referrals I might get a week or a month, and my business would be similar to how it was maybe in the early 90s, So I didn't want to go back to that, where I'm highly involved in that sort of thing.
So we're getting a lot of questions on the webinar, guys. If you guys are on the main webinar page, you can see a link to Pat's book. Pat, why the heck did you want to write a book?
It's a good question, and I mean, it's a very hard question to answer, but I think that it's part of a reincarnation for me. I wanted to, number one, I wanted to share my experiences, because I think that I have the ability to put take big complicated things, or things that might seem big and complicated to people, and make them very simple and easy to understand, and I could save them 24 years of what I've learned and teach it to them in a book. If they follow the book and they follow the 6 steps, they can save a couple of decades of time of getting their head kicked in and learning the hard way. But some people like to climb mountains just to get to the top. And that's me, and I've climbed a lot of mountains, as you mentioned, and I get to the top, and people say, why would you go out there in the 20-degree weather and sleep in a tent and, not take a shower and walk all day and get all sore, and why do you and eat food that tastes like crap? Why would you choose to do that? Well, I choose to do that because I want to get to the top of the mountain, and there's fun in that. And I think the same thing applies with my book. I wanted to write a book, and when I wrote the book, I wanted to be a bestseller. And I don't want to write a book just to write a book and just put it out there. So I'm on a trek now. The release date is in September, and I'm on a trek now to sell as many copies as I can. prior to the release date and build it up so that I can make it a bestseller.
So we can talk about that a second, because he actually, guys, was talking about something kind of interesting and just laying it out there. It's a way to kind of game the system, basically, so he can, when his book actually officially goes for sale, if he has a bunch of pre-orders for the book, that's what they base the bestseller list on, is how many initial sales you have within, I think it's 60 days. Is that right, Pat?
No, it's 7 days.
Oh, 7 days. So basically how many books you sell in the first 7 days. So he's actually, yeah. So this is his new mountain. But Pat, let's talk about the book specifically. So
yep.
I haven't seen it. I've heard you talk about it. I've talked with you about it. So it's called 6 Steps to 7 Figures, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So I'm interested in your book. Let's say I'm an agent out there. Let's say I'm a newer agent or an agent who's been in the business for a while, typical agent that's, getting by but not doing great. Why would I want to buy this book? You mentioned the fact that you essentially are trying to encapsulate 24 years of experience going from just being an ordinary agent to an extraordinary agent. What are the chapters? What am I going to learn from this book? Give me, pull out a few pearls that you think would benefit our listeners the most.
That's great. I mean, it's obviously it's a large book, but it's not that large. It's 160 pages, so it's hard to. You're not going to obviously get it on the phone call, but here's the thing. I'll just start with chapter 1. Okay, there's 6 things that I've done, whether it's been anything from say going from 10 sales my first year to 500 sales, going from 0 REOs in 2008 to 300 REOs. I take about 150 days off a year. I used to work every single day of the year. I used to work 360 days a year. Going from that person to one that takes 150 days off. Every goal that I've set and that I've accomplished have gone through these same 6 steps. And the first step that I do is I write down my big goal. So let's say my big goal is this year, if I'm just going to pretend I'm an agent, that's selling 20 homes a year. Let's say I want to bring that to 35 homes a year, 3 homes a month. So my goal would be, to sell 36 homes this year. Then I take that and turn it into a smaller goal. And by smaller goal, I don't mean 3 homes a month. That's a smaller goal. It's the same goal. A smaller goal would be the discipline that is required to sell that extra 12 houses. So Jim Rohn says, affirmation without discipline is delusion. I'll say it again, affirmation without discipline is delusion. So if you're going to sit there and say, I want to sell 36 homes this year, and last year you only sold 24, you're not going to get that extra 12 just by saying it. You have to put something in place. So the small goal would be, I call sellers that are short on their mortgage 1 hour a day, let's say. So we're saying 90 minutes a day. So your small goal is to call sellers for 90 minutes, 5 days a week. Your big goal is to sell 12 more houses. You with me, Tim?
Absolutely. You're basically stating the goal, and then what you're doing is you're creating a very specific plan that supports the goal. You're not just saying, this is what my goal is, now I'm going to just basically do as I've been doing before, expecting to get better results. What you're doing is, this is my new goal, and this is what I'm going to do specifically to accomplish the new goal.
Right. And most people just set that goal, and then they just, let the chips fall where they may. So I set the big goal, I set the small goal, then I turn them both into affirmations. So my affirmation would be, I sell 36 homes a year, and then my smaller affirmation would be, I prospect to sellers that are short 90 minutes a day. And I record it. Now I record it on my cell phone. I used to record it in a tape, and then after that I made a CD. Now I just do it on my phone, and for 5 minutes every day on the way to work, I listen to that affirmation. I have affirmations that are anything from, I do yoga 50 times a year. I take a certain amount of date nights with my wife or whatever. I put it all down on my cell phone, all in 5 minutes, and then the big goals, the small goals, and I turn them into affirmations as if they already exist. I sell 36 homes a year. I prospect 90 minutes a day to people that are short, and listen to it over and over again. So my question would be to the listeners that if you wanted to create that goal, if you wanted to create the fact that your 90 minutes, that you're calling sellers that are short for 90 minutes, and you put that on your cell phone, and you listen to it every single day for 2 years, would it be possible that you wouldn't start calling sellers 90 minutes a day? Would it be possible that you would be able to listen to that for 2 years without actually taking action?
You're just basically, what I'm hearing you say, Pat, is you're essentially, when you're trying to adapt to a new program, you're loading new software. And the computer is your brain, the software is the affirmations, and you code the software yourself. So the software, for you specifically, you're saying call shorts. Let's break that down. Right. So he's saying, guys, he prospects owners that he knows that are upside down in their homes. And Pat, just so we can cover the meat and potatoes, are you calling the expired shorts upside down owners? Are you calling from a specific list? I mean, they're going to ask questions like that, so you might as well just knock that out.
Well, I'm giving an example for them that may.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, so you could expire short sale sellers.
You can buy lists. You can find lists.
Exactly.
So.
Well, yeah.
But here's my point. One or two things is going to happen. You're either going to quit because you're going to say, oh, I'm a hypocrite. I listen to this every day and it never happens, so I'm going to stop doing it. You're not going to make it to 2 years, right? You're just going to stop doing it because you're going to feel like an idiot because you're listening to this and not following through. Or you're going to start doing it because of the same reason, because you're listening to it every day. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it. Does this make sense? So,
absolutely.
I've had people come to me and say, okay, I can't save any money. I want to save, $10,000 this year because I don't have any savings. I want to buy a CD for $10,000. So I say, okay, create an affirmation of how much money you need to save, no matter how small. So let's say someone says, I save $20 a day. So the big affirmation is, I have a $10,000 CD. The small affirmation is, I save $20 a day. The reality is they just sit there and listen. I save $20 a day for 2 years. They're going to start saving $20 a day. It's impossible for them not to. If they don't, it's because they quit. The only way you can fail is to quit.
So what I'm hearing you say, Pat, is that in the first chapter or the first section of the book, it sounds like, is really honing in on what it is they specifically want to accomplish. Very specific, like essentially this is business planning to the next level, because really what you're doing is you're affecting a lot of your thoughts. You're bringing in some affirmations and things like that. Then I heard you say basically once you define what those goals are, you know that just simply having a goal isn't enough, because after all, a goal is a dream with an action plan. And so what you're doing is you're then writing down specifically what the steps are to go about accomplishing that goal. So, right. I mean, that's the basic stuff. And it doesn't have to be overly complicated. And I know, Pat, you do a lot of public speaking, and I'm sure when you present this information, some people get it, but most people probably get overwhelmed with the details. And really, at the end of the day, guys, Pat has said it just like you should apply it. So for example, if you want to sell 25 homes this year, you need to sort of in your mind think about, okay, what is it? And if you sold 10 homes last year and you want to double your inventory, what is it that you're willing to do in addition to what you did last year to accomplish that goal? And you have to be very real and specific about it. And so if, for example, you weren't, again, we'll just continue to stay on this example, prospecting expired short sale sellers, that is a gold mine, okay, because they already have convinced themselves that they want to list the house as a short sale. Chances are they've already started the process. And there's a 99.9% chance the only reason the house didn't sell previously is because the old agent, let's just be honest, A, didn't know how to do a short sale, and then overpriced it, and so it didn't sell. You priced that house correctly, it's going to go into contract. There you go. That is one way that a lot of you, with probably very little effort, could double your inventory this year. Go to your MLS, find out, those types of steps are what you take to increasing your output. Now, one of the things, Pat, and I know this is something that you cover in your book, I'm sure you do, is that a lot of people think they can game things. For example, you put forth effort. You decide you're going to climb. I mean, how many mountains have you climbed, literally?
Well, let's just say 10 that are, decent height.
Okay. So you've climbed some, he's climbed some of the world's tallest mountains, okay? So it wasn't just enough for him to say, I want to climb the mountain, okay? Some of you are thinking, well, Tim, you're just giving me common sense. Well, maybe I am, but are you actually applying it, thus making it common? But he actually had to go and physically get in shape prior to the climbing of the mountain. He had to go and start, depending on how high it was, he had to start, buying different types of gear. There's so much that goes into actually climbing the mountain. It wasn't just enough for him to think about it. There's many actions he had to take. What Pat is, and any top producer and any successful people, what they're really good at, guys, at the end of the day, when you read books about them and you listen and you take in the information, what is difficult to encapsulate with words or even spoken word is the action that precedes the actual talking about it. And so what Pat is he's really good at taking action, right? He is an information gatherer, to be sure. I've always known Pat to always be curious and always be learning. But what he's really good at is taking action. I mean, Pat, that's really the essence of what we're talking about. That's the reason the book was an idea, a challenge for yourself, and you took action on it. When you decide to shift your business model from the old business model to the new business model, you took action on it. Do you take actions and do you shift and are you willing to proceed down roads that you haven't been down without knowing all the possible minefields in the way, or do you just basically proceed with the confidence that whatever comes your way you can deal with?
Yeah, the latter, I would say, is I just move forward. I mean, I think that where a lot of people ready, aim, fire, I just kind of aim, fire, or ready, fire, because you can't wait for all the lights to turn green before you start driving. As you're going to hit some red lights, you're going to have some hiccups, but most agents, or all agents, I feel, are resourceful people. There's ways you can handle things, and you have to have a certain amount of faith. I think most people don't have that faith, but most people don't have the faith that's needed to be successful. But every successful person I know has a huge amount of faith, and by faith I mean, I pick up the phone and I say, I'm going to start calling asset managers, and I have no foreclosure accounts. But I have enough faith to know that even though, I don't get my first one for 5 months, that it is going to happen. And it does happen. And I get to 42. And I look back on that and I say, man, how did I know? And all these people are just saying, oh, it's too late to get in the foreclosures, and the doors are shut, No one can get in anymore, and all of a sudden I go from 0 to 42. It's just because I had the faith to do it. How do you sell over 500 homes by doing silly television commercials? You just have the faith that you're going to do it, and they work.
Well, that's the taking action. I mean, it's similar, right, Pat, to when you're climbing a mountain. You don't get halfway, though I'm quite certain that halfway up some of those mountains, I know you climb with David and Tim, that you guys must occasionally think, what the hell am I doing on this mountain? Screw this. Let's go back down. But you still keep climbing, right?
Yep.
I mean, that's really what you're describing right now.
Exactly. And that's where the affirmations pay off, is that, your brain is programmed to have belief that you can do it just because you've been affirming it for a while.
So I had a great question that just came in. What keeps you from how do you not give up? I mean, there's a lot of agents that do believe, by the way, you said something kind of funny. It made me laugh. It's an internal joke here at HREU. a lot of agents are trying to perpetuate the lie that it's too late to get into the REO business. And I always ask, when agents ask me that question, I always say, oh, really? Who did you hear that from? And they always say an existing REO agent in their market or in their office. And I say, well, do you think that existing REO agent was maybe perhaps a little bit self-motivated for their own preservation and keeping their own REO accounts to tell you that it's too late to get into the business?
The reality of it is easier now than it ever has been before, and I'll tell you why. Because, like you mentioned before, they're firing people left and right. I'll be honest with you, we lost an account with One West Bank 2 weeks ago. We had 8 listings, and they just pulled all 8 listings. They just, we had gotten too much too fast and just, quite frankly, didn't give them the customer service that they wanted, and they pulled 8 listings from us, and some other agent just got them. And, before they had these die-hard agents, first of all, there wasn't as many agents available that could do REOs, that understood REOs, and they liked
before. Yeah.
Now there's tons of them, so it's much easier for them to flip. And what a lot of them are doing now is where they used to have the agent put the utilities in their name, they're putting the utilities in the name of the bank. And the reason why they're doing that is to give them control. So they could flip the listing through 5 or 6 agents and not lose any momentum, where now if they fire us on some of these, and I take a week to turn off the utilities, and the next agent takes a week to get them in his name, and it's let's say it's a condo, and it's hard to get the condo docs, and it's hard to get the the relationship with the condo association. They get a key to get inside the main building or whatever. The bottom line is it could take some of these 2 or 3 weeks before they can get them back on the market with a new agent. Whereas if they put everything in the bank's name rather than the agent's name, they can fire you on a Wednesday and have it listed with the new agent on a Thursday. And they're doing that because they want the ability to fire and hire. And
well, you're talking about reassignments, and that's one of the best opportunities. Yeah, the reassignments are one of the best opportunities right now. And the other thing that you're touching on is the fact that the REO business, Pat, back in 07 and 08 was really about, a lot of it was who you knew. I mean, a lot of it was basically, glad handing and maybe having some reference here or some in there. Though that stuff is still important, it does still work. At the end of the day, what works now, what gets you business now, and what keeps you in the game as far as, REOs, is what you know. And you just hit the nail on the head. It's basically about running a very professional, really at the end of the day, be like the banks are. Work when the banks work. Operate like they operate. Answer the phone like they answer the phone. Be as bureaucratic and systematic and, frankly, as black and white and dry and boring as they are. That's really what they're looking for. They're not looking for your typical real estate, look at me and my dog type, realtor. They're looking for people that can perform a service. And if you get that philosophy and you adopt it and you don't struggle with it, and you essentially just remember you're servicing the banks. Before you were servicing sellers and you had to service their egos, and you had to service their, wanting an ad here and wanting an ad there. But now you're servicing the banks. Lots of agents don't get that, and they struggle with it. And a lot of them, frankly, will never be able to transition into the REO business because they don't understand why the banks aren't conforming to them, because they're not willing to change the way that they go about thinking and conducting business to suit the banks. And that's kind of what you're describing now. But, Pat, if I are in the business, if in your book, right, I'm a new agent. I just got into business. I'm trying to get my real estate education together. I'm trying to get my sort of head screwed on straight so that I can take advantage of this marketplace. In the book, what am I going to take away that's going to help me with really staying on track and avoiding frustration?
Well, the big impact is this. I am not a theorist. I am not someone who's writing books saying, based on studies or based on something I heard or what have you, or what this person says, blah, blah, blah. This is all based on the last 24 years, what I've done myself, what has worked, what hasn't worked, and what I consistently do over and over again, no matter what the goal is, to make it successful. And that time and time again, it works, and I know it works, and I know that if anybody out there that puts the 6 steps into place will have success with it, period. I mean, you can't lose. And I wish that 24 years ago that someone had said to me, all you need to do is, in everything you do, follow these 6 steps, and you'll succeed. I would have been successful a lot sooner, more times over.
You're basically a living, breathing example of the old, I think it's a Chinese proverb. I'm sure one of our students will correct me if I say this wrong, but a smart man learns from his mistakes, and a brilliant man learns from the mistakes of others.
Exactly.
That would have been a good tagline for your book, by the way. You can have that. So
yeah,
that's really the essence of the idea of learning from other people. Whether it be a book or from an experienced coach. And Pat, I really love what you said because it is so true. You've been there, done that, and you just haven't. It's not, your knowledge isn't gained from sort of like sitting around talking about it or thinking about it. You've actually been on the front lines. As the Marines say, you are frosty. You know what it's like to have the bullets whizzing by your head. You know what it's like having all the pressures. It's not something it's not something you're thinking about. It's actually something you've experienced. And guys, when you've been around somebody and you read the words from somebody or you hear somebody speak that's actually been on the front lines who is frosty, you can feel it. I mean, when I'm around Pat, even though he is really nice and he's calm, and that comes from a long career of being successful consistently, that comes from a long career of having the confidence of knowing that whatever comes down that road, he's going to be able to handle it like he has in this transition from the old business model to the new business model. You can sense it. So that confidence, guys, ultimately comes from knowledge, certainly, but it comes from taking action. It comes from taking action consistently. And like Pat said, it comes from taking action even when, frankly, you don't necessarily feel 100% confident. He still has the faith that when he sets a goal, no matter what, he's going to climb that damn mountain. He's going to get to the top. Nothing's going to slow him down. And, if you know Pat, I know some of you on this call certainly know Pat personally, he is a bulldog and he is extremely stubborn. I do remember that lunch where we sat down and talked, and I do remember your initial reaction was like, I don't know that this is a good fit for me. This might not be for me. You had to think about it. But once you did, once the switch was flipped in your head, nobody could get in your way. That energy, that drive, Pat, is the essence of, I think what really a true top producer in real estate or anything else, that's what it is. It's that drive. Can you bottle that? Can you teach that to somebody, that drive?
I think so. I think they can teach themselves that drive. I mean, I do think it's teachable. I think that, and again, it goes back to what I was saying before. If you're looking at your goals every day and you're affirming them every day, if you quit, it's because you don't have that drive. All you have to do is not quit, and that drive exists, whether you feel like it does or not. It just exists. And
so what you're saying is the essence of the drive. That's very interesting. I love what you just said. The essence of the drive is not quitting.
Right.
That's it. Yeah.
Yeah, simple.
And sooner or later you'll win.
You have to. You can't fail. The only way you can fail is to quit.
Yeah, that's a really, really, I think that's real.
Think about this.
Yeah.
Think about it. Why does Weight Watchers work so well?
Yummy food? I don't know.
Well, just because you have to track everything, right? You have to pay attention to your goal. You have to, you have points for every piece of food that you put in your mouth and whatever. So you're highly focused, and it's constant affirmation because it's in front of you all the time. But what happens when somebody who has been tracking what they eat for 60 days quits tracking?
Yeah.
They gain weight, right?
That's right. By the way, you're describing that what I was the last week's Superstar interview to a T. Julie and I developed 21 points, basically, that agents should give themselves 5 points for having done each day. The goal is to have 50 points a day. It's kind of interesting that you're tying in the whole Weight Watchers point tracking thing, because it's the same thing.
So take it in your context. The only way they would fail is to stop tracking their points and stop following the 5 points. And so it's as simple as 5 things a day, but you're guaranteed success, and the only way you'll fail is to quit.
Yeah, that's the bottom line.
Yeah.
So I'm curious, Pat, what do you think the next 5 to 10 years will be like in the real estate industry? You can basically, maybe answer that just for your specific market, but you do a lot of national speaking. What do you think is going to hold next?
Yeah.
I mean, 40%. Well, Pat, there's a statistic that says 40% of all homeowners with a mortgage, 40% are underwater now. 40%. In certain markets like Vegas, where Jules and I live, it's over 70%. What do you think is going to happen next for the real estate industry, considering that's what is in front of us?
Well, I think that, it's interesting because business has been very, and by business I mean banking business, financial business, has been very tolerant of it seems has been very tolerant of short sales, modifications, accepting the fact that all these people are underwater, we're going to treat them with kid gloves. And I think eventually what has to happen is, some of these banks are just going to have to reach the point where they just say, we can't go on like this. I don't know how any financial institution makes money today. I don't know how these banks just keep going like they do, and these mortgage companies keep going with the amount of money that they're losing. So I think that eventually all that will have to come to a stop. Somebody's going to get no more Mr. Nice Guy. And once the first big bank becomes no more Mr. Nice Guy, I think you're going to see a lot of them start following suit. And they're all going to start getting meaner, and you're going to start seeing more foreclosures, less modifications, less short sales, less being nice, because they can't possibly profit. And I think what'll happen is you're eventually going to see more and more neighborhoods deteriorate because more and more foreclosures hit the market, prices become depressed, and certainly you're going to see the days on the market and the saturation rate, or whatever you want to call it,
absorption. You said it right.
Absorption rate. Yeah, you're going to see absorption rate start to increase again.
You're not ending this call on a very cheery note, Pat, I have to say.
I think that's got to happen. I mean, it's just got to. But maybe it won't. I mean, you just don't. Nobody knows. I'm not an economist. I don't know.
If I were to lend you, Pat, money at 0%, could you make money on it? Could you make money on it?
Yeah.
Well, that's how the banks are making money, to answer your question, your somewhat rhetorical question.
Yeah,
and how have they been able to make money with that money? Some loans, some investing, things like that. And you're absolutely right that the problem with residential real estate is too big, and they have been, kicking the can down the road in perpetuity, it almost seems. But that's all coming to an end. And yeah, you're right. I mean, it's gonna the Band-Aid has to be completely pulled off, right? I mean, that's what we've been procrastinating. We've been telling people that they can keep their homes when they can't afford them. We've been lying. And when I say we, I mean mostly, let's be honest, the government. They've been trying to come out with all these programs. And us in the real estate industry, I mean, there was a news report that came out yesterday that there's some big bank settlement. And this is, Pat, you'll love this. There's some big bank settlement. A lot of agents have asked me about this, where, the banks are going to have to all chip in $200 million to, whatever, right? It's a fallout from the whole robo-signing thing. The Attorney General's $200 billion. All right, so that's great. So let's do a little math, shall we? If you take the number of underwater homeowners, and by the way, the government is pressing the servicers, the banks, to use that money to help people do principal write-downs. Oh my gosh, this sounds like a great headline for the blog, right? Principal write-downs coming, people can stay in their homes, negative equity wiped out, those types of things. Well, if you do a little math, it works out to be roughly $3,000 per every underwater homeowner if they work the settlement out where that $200 billion then gets used to write down, principal, basically write down principal of the balances, right?
Yep.
$200 billion divided by the number of underwater homeowners works out to be, that's no resolution. At the end of the day, that money's just going to sit there. But to support what you're saying, the whole HAMP thing that originally came out back in 2007, it looks like HAMP is going to be put to an end next week, because it didn't work.
Right.
So really, at the end of the day, what we're dealing with is a lot of people that are in homes that they cannot afford, and those people have to move. Those houses are going to have to be put for sale. The reason that banks will do short sales right now, given the economy and the housing market, is because they lose less money. The national average is they lose something like 15% less, per short sale than they would if it were to go to foreclosure. But yeah, there's going to have to be a decisive clearing, and that has not happened yet. And Pat, that goes back to what your point was, is that this is still an incredible opportunity to get in on short sales and REOs, despite the fact that it's been going on for now 5 years. The opportunity is still ahead of us because we've been doing nothing but procrastinating the inevitable, right? We've been doing everything, and I say we, country, government, right? We voted for the people that are running the country. We've supported these various programs that have come out. It's just done nothing but procrastinated the inevitable, and now it's going to have to happen. So, Pat, it's kind of strange, right? You're going to benefit from this market correction. You're going to benefit from these people that are, quote-unquote, losing their homes. I'm sort of curious. Do you ever have any conflicts with making money now when so many other people aren't?
No, not at all. No, I don't. Conflicts, you mean internally, like mentally? Is it okay to make money?
Some agents that we have, literally, I'll get questions on the blog mostly. They'll ask questions about, well, how can you be coaching realtors to make money off other people's hardship? That's really the essence of the question. And, I don't think if you're a real estate practitioner, you don't really have a choice. You have to solve the problem that's in front of you. You have to sell the house that's in front of you.
Right, absolutely, yeah. And the fact is, if you don't do it, someone else is going to do it. It's not, and you're not the cause by any means. You're not the cause of their hardship. If there would be guilt, obviously, if you caused somebody hardship, but you're not the cause of the hardship. You're the solution to the hardship.
I had a subprime lender that I had as a graduate coaching student, and this guy was, in case he's listening, I'm not going to give any more information than that, but he was a subprime lender. He was a very successful subprime lender. So he put all these people in these pick-up payments and these ninja loans and all the rest of it. So that business obviously went away, and he was trying to get into the real estate business, and his idea was that he was going to call all the people that he knew were upside down in their houses that had these, grenade with a pin pulled mortgages, and he was going to try to get them to list the houses with them. That didn't work, that was a bit of a conflict. He'd prospect them, and they'd say, "You're the one that put me in this situation." So, yeah, exactly.
So, it's like if you're getting a car accident and you caused it, you apologize. But if you're the one that stops because you see it and you run to help the person out of the car and you save their life from a burning car, you don't feel guilty about that.
No, of course not. So, Pat, what excites you? What motivates you? What is it right now that's really keeping you looking forward? I feel a lot of forward, thoughts coming from you. I feel a nice subdued, not just confidence, but excitement coming from you. What excites you now?
Tim, I get passionate about doing new things. I think I'm smart enough to know that you never want to completely change industries or change. You don't want to go from being an accountant to an auto mechanic because it sets you back. And I've done the same thing for 24 years, and I think it's done well for me. But I like to do other things within the real estate industry, such as write a book for realtors, specifically for realtors, by a realtor, or, get involved with different mortgage companies. For instance, part of the time I spent today, I'm trying to get the HUD accounts. There's 3 HUD accounts in the state of Maryland, and I'm, prospecting for those because I don't have them, which is different than the normal day-to-day stuff that, most realtors do, such as react to buyers and sellers. So I just get motivated by, I guess, by pulling that trigger in the ready, aim, fire, by firing. That's what jazzes me, and having different things to fire at.
That's good. So agents out there, you're listening to Pat. I hope, we didn't get into a lot of the specific, step 1, 2, and 3, because really I wanted you to hear the philosophy, and I wanted you to dial in and tap into how somebody who's been successful, and arguably one of the most successful agents ever, as in the history of, National Association of Realtors, a true billion-dollar agent, somebody who sold thousands of homes and it was making over $5 million a year, and now is, rebuilding his business, who's had certainly been at the top of the mountain and had many mountains that he decided that he wanted to climb and had to psych himself into doing it. Someone who's used to taking action at a high level consistently for a long period of time. I wanted you guys to tap into that. I wanted you to feel the vibe. And hopefully you understand that really, truly, at the end of the day, Pat's just like you. He's just like me. He's just like the rest of it. The difference is he takes action. He decides to set goals and he takes action. And the other thing that I heard Pat say, which Julie IM'd me during the call, is that you don't give up. Pat doesn't quit. Pat will not give up when he set his mind on accomplishing a specific goal. So students who join Harris Real Estate University, when you decide to get motivated and you're going to be a great short sale listing agent, how long does it take for you to get frustrated? And when you feel that first little pang of frustration, what do you do with it? Do you just basically use that as your excuse to quit? Do you use that as your excuse to quit on your dreams, your goals? Do you just basically try to go back to doing what you were doing before? Guys, the simple fact is that you can't go back to doing what you were doing before. The things that worked before in the real estate industry, they won't ever work again. Okay, and that's a bold statement. And maybe 20 years from now, that statement won't be true. But realistically, everyone listening to this call, you're not going to be selling real estate in 20 years. At least not to the point where you're trying to make a living at it. So for the rest of your careers, the rules have changed. How you go about succeeding in this business has changed. But what hasn't changed is the stick-to-itiveness, the focus on accomplishing the goal that Pat lives every single day. Pat, is there anything you'd like to say to the, it's about 1,000 listening now and the thousands that will listen to this call and replay? Anything you'd like to say to them before we wrap the call up?
No, I just wanted to touch base on that Tim had asked me to see if I could, give a discount or help out all the students of Harris Real Estate University. So what I did is I created a special web page that I'm selling the book for $9.95, which is essentially 55% off. The book is going to sell at Barnes & Nobles and wherever else for $16.95. And if you bought it directly through our website after its release date, there's a $3.99 shipping and handling. So it essentially costs about $21. I'm selling it, no shipping and handling, $9.95 for today and this weekend only. And these are numbers. You got to write down the numbers, not the letters, but it's 6 steps, STEPS, 27 figures. 6 steps, 27 figures, .com/Harris, HARRIS, especially for this call. If you go to that website, you can get as many copies as you want. I encourage you to buy 10, 20, 30 copies and hand them out to other agents in your office.
And Pat, let me say this because, frankly, I don't like when I'm listening to speakers and I suspect they're making money in the back end. Pat is paying me nothing, okay? So the reason that he's having you identify Harris with the website is so you can get the discount. And, Julie and I, when we do interviews and we do things like this, we don't make money from it. I'm not backing you into it. You don't need to worry about my motivation for bringing Pat to you. My motivation was because I wanted him to share with you his wisdom and his information. Pat, also, if they're on the webinar, if you guys are listening on our traditional webinar screen or you might be listening off the blog, there's a button there that takes you right to the website, and you can click that button as well. So, listen, support Pat. Buy the book. It's cheap. It's great information. And, really, as we said before, a smart man learns from his mistakes. A brilliant man learns from the mistakes of others. But by reading Pat's words, by buying his book, you kind of tap right into the brain of one of the nation's top producing agents. And and this is not just top producing agents back when everything was going great. This is a top producing agent who's been able to live through really an ice age in the real estate industry and has come back and is coming back stronger than ever. There's no way for that. What is it? What was it again, Pat? $10, $11?
Yeah, $9.95. No shipping and handling.
$10. Yeah, I mean, come on now. That's kind of a no-brainer. So, Pat, listen, I really appreciate your time today. I really appreciate you. I had to chase you for a good 2 months, but still, I really appreciate you being our superstar interview today. And we'll continue to support your book, and I, really appreciate your support of the Harris Real Estate University. And I know you were enrolled as a student, and really, Pat, more than anything, every time you do a public speaking event, every time you do something with Gary Keller and wherever else, and you're talking to all those agents, I sincerely appreciate the contribution you're making to the real estate industry, because every one of those agents listening to you, they're not just a realtor. They're a small business owner that probably has mouths to feed, probably has their own goals, their own dreams, and I think you know how impactful you're being to the real estate industry on an agent-by-agent level. So, on behalf of Julie, myself, and all the faculty and staff of Harris Real Estate University, I want to sincerely thank you for being this week's superstar.
You're welcome. My pleasure, and thank you for having me. I appreciate the opportunity and always enjoy the conversation.
Have a great week, everyone, and thank you, Pat. Have a great weekend.
Okay, thanks, Tim. Bye, Julie.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.